guys, Dr. Beevler in the office today at Coral Gables. Not seeing patients today, but we were doing some logistical work, admin work, I guess if you want to call it, to make sure that everybody has labs ordered, make sure everybody is getting follow-ups and getting seen like they're supposed to, scheduling, etc. The kind of the back end of medicine. But that being said, we, my patient care coordinator and I got into a long discussion kind of about what it really means, charging the human battery. What is that? What does that even mean? You know, are we a battery? And you know, science says yes. You know, you have electrical current that's generated in your body via the shuttling of different ions, basically. You know, sodium, potassium, calcium, etc. And that's how your body creates action potentials and does work with that potential energy that's created. And that can be augmented by by a couple of things. So the net negative charge was always thought in conventional biochemistry to be caused by the sodium potassium ATPase, which is basically a pump that basically separates where potassium is being shuttled inside the cell and sodium is being shuttled outside the cell in a gradient that controls an electrical gradient that allows what's called active transport of molecules across membranes. Without getting too technical, it basically allows the cell to do work by creating a gradient or creating a battery. You know, you have a net negative charge inside the cell, you have a net positive charge outside the cell, and that is used to the cell's advantage. And you know, in conventional biochemistry, you would say that that's all done via the creation of ATP to do work. But as one of my mentors and colleagues, Dr. Jack Cruz, talks about, there's a huge discrepancy of work that has to be done in a cell versus how much ATP is actually made in the body, and it's not even close. It's not like it's a little bit. It's not even close. So there has to be some other driving force behind how your cellular processes are getting done, and how you maintain that negative charge. And again, in addition to ATP or adenosine triphosphate, which is the kind of the end result of your mitochondrial electron transport chain, you also have something called the fourth phase of water, which is kind of discovered by a guy up at the University of Washington. And what they found is that water in cells, when it's surrounded by proteins and different things in the cells, and particularly when it's acted upon by light, all wavelengths of light. If you can imagine the colors of light, it goes all the way down from, you know, somewhere in the 100 to 200 nanometer range, which is the deep UVC range, which is stuff we don't want to be exposed to in general, and it's harmful, to UVB, to UVA, to violet, then blue, then green, then yellow, and orange, red, and infrared. And all those color spectrums have basically biophysical properties that happen on a cellular level. And those have been studied pretty extensively, particularly in the red and near infrared range, and some far infrared, and then UV. And then, of course, if you've been following my page at all, you probably know that, you know, we're big proponents of protecting yourself from artificial blue light, because it acts as an oxidative stressor, damages mitochondria, and it damages your ability to make melatonin, which has its own repercussions. But basically what they found is that water, which is H2O, and hydrogens are positively charged and the oxygens negatively charged, when exposed to certain types of light, will basically separate and line up in a very orderly fashion, which is called the exclusion zone. And you know, basically you'll have an area where there's a lot of plus or protons that are, you know, positively charged, and you'll have another area which is negatively charged by the water molecules. And that area of exclusion zone is basically an area of where potential energy is generated, and that we think makes up the difference of where ATP is not enough to power all of our cellular processes. So what we're doing essentially by truly repairing the human battery or building the human battery is we're number one, we want to make sure your mitochondria are functioning well. They're not leaking electrons. They're not denutrified, or they don't have enough. Make sure that all the enzymes inside of the mitochondria are working well. Make sure the lipid membranes and stuff like that are intact, not damaged or peroxidated, which is basically where the lipid membranes of the mitochondria are damaged by oxidative stress and inflammation. We want to take care of that, and I think there's a lot of people working on that. I mean, when I was in functional medicine training, we talked a lot about making sure the electron transport chain, the Krebs cycle. These are big, fancy processes in the body where your body makes energy from fats and proteins and carbohydrates or macromolecules and turns them into ATP. And I think most functional medicine doctors are pretty okay about that. But where I don't think that a lot of people are focusing is something called autophagy, which is basically repairing or breaking down old damaged cellular components, and mitophagy, which is basically mitochondrial specific autophagy, which is basically where you break down old damaged mitochondria to get rid of old ones that are leaky, that are maybe not functioning well, that are maybe have mutations, etc. Getting rid of those and then making new ones, and that process is called mitochondrial biogenesis. And so we are really focusing on, yes, feeding the mitochondria, making sure that we're kind of reducing oxidative stress so they're not being damaged, but we also want to make sure that we're getting rid of the old damaged ones and making new ones. And then when they're working well and they're making a lot of ATP, or maximally or most efficiently making ATP, you're able to not only burn calories for energy like you're supposed to, we're also utilizing physical properties, aside from just giving vitamins, minerals, different types of fuels to make sure that process happens well, is we're giving physical properties such as light. And so we know, for example, that red light, particularly infrared light, will build EZ or exclusion zone water the most. It'll build it the most, and we can harness that. And so when we're using photobiomodulation or red light therapy here in the office, by this giant panel that I'm staring at that's putting off red and near infrared light, or I'm looking over here at my infrared sauna that I've hacked, where it has everything from 600 nanometers, which is where red starts, all the way to 10,000 nanometers, which is where the far infrared penetrates into. You have a real synergistic approach to how we're building up your battery. We're basically creating as much of the exclusion zone as possible in a treatment, to maximize your energy production. And when you do that, now you have the energy to power all of your cellular processes. Now you have the ability to detox. Now you have the ability to feel energetic. Now your mitochondria are functioning better, so they're not creating a lot of oxidative stress, excess oxidative stress, which leads to excess inflammation, which leads to all kinds of chronic conditions that we don't want to talk about. That's how it leads to the 4 horsemen that we talked about in previous videos. So the bottom line is we have a very multifactorial, science-based approach about how we're dealing with disease, particularly chronic disease. Chronic disease, we talk about in other videos, are caused by the 4 horsemen in general: oxidative stress, insulin resistance, excess cortisol production or catabolic physiology, and excess inflammation, chronic inflammation. And we're gonna talk about all those. I've already done a video on inflammation. There's several other videos of inflammation I need to do. There's other videos on insulin resistance and diabetes that I want to do. So there's all kinds of kind of deeper rabbit holes that you get into when you talk about those things. But what we're doing is we're using a multifactorial approach to getting rid of those things. And the way we're doing that is we're using the best that we know about a conventional medical doctor myself, like we're using that if we have to, in the right setting. We're using a lot of integrative and functional medicine, which is fantastic. I think it's a good next step in the right direction. But we're also using quantum medicine and the biophysical properties of light, water, and magnetism, particularly light in this case right now, and temperature as well. Heat, will make heat shock proteins. Heat will make you burn excessive calories. Heat will, increase neurotransmitters and stuff like that in your brain, norepinephrine particularly. Heat has a lot of benefits, and that's why the infrared sauna, in addition to the water structuring and building the human battery, it also has all these other physical properties as well of heat shock proteins, which help, proteins that are misfolded, which is a lot of times found in neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. Heat shock proteins are responsible for a lot of cool things in science right now. So, heat, we want to, at some point we want to have a cold plunge or a cold therapy device, and how we're going to, what does that do? It helps build brown fat. What does that do? What does brown fat mean? Well, you're basically taking white fat, which is inert, doesn't do anything except for store, and you're basically creating massive, what they call mitochondrial biogenesis, and that fat then becomes, instead of white, it becomes brown, and when it's brown, it means it has a lot more mitochondria, and when it has more mitochondria, it can burn stored energy, right? So then you're more efficient at burning your stored calories, or the calories that are coming in, So we're gonna be using a lot of these physical properties in addition, and this is, in my opinion, something that is either rarely or not done anywhere, where we're combining conventional, integrative, functional, and then this whole new area of quantum medicine, quantum biology. And I think you're just gonna get a unique experience here at Integra, and I don't think you're gonna get it really anywhere else. Maybe there's a couple of places that I can think of that you'd be getting it. Like I said, one of my mentors, Jack Cruz, for example, he's probably the thought leader in this area of quantum medicine and biology. And I've definitely got a lot of information and ideas from him. As a matter of fact, when I biohacked this clear light infrared sauna, a lot of the ideas were coming from him, and things that he led me to go look at with literature, right? Like in terms of adding physical properties to an already great product to maximize benefit clinically, with having results, less pain, less depression, less more energy, etc., less inflammation, but also to improve mitochondrial function, which is hard to really nail down and talk about that on a superficial level, because it is such a profound part of how we function as human beings and as animals, really. So I know I got a little deep, I got a little sidetracked there, but we just had such a great conversation, trying to think how we can make patients better, using all means possible. Really all means possible. We're open to using whatever means possible that's safe and effective to help our patients, relieve unnecessary and unneeded suffering. And if you are interested in someone like that, or a clinic like that who has that in mind, give us a call, and we'll be happy to help you out. Take care.